Hi guys, if you're a subscriber to this channel, this will be a different video for you. Today I'm going to be covering the New Orleans Saints. They are my home team and my favorite team, and the draft is coming up in a couple of weeks. So I thought it would be fun, interesting, and entertaining if I covered the New Orleans Saints and what they're going to do, what I think they're going to do, what I think they're thinking, and all of this surrounding the draft coming up for 2022. We're going to look at the trade that went down with the Eagles and how I think a lot of the national analysts and even a lot of the local analysts have gotten it wrong. Well, a lot of them just seem confused about it, and it seemed pretty clear cut to me. And we're also going to look at the draft, different prospects, and what the Saints might do with their draft haul this year. So we're going to start with the Saints draft, the picks that they have right now. They have two picks in round one, picks number 16, picks number 19. They acquired this second first round pick with a trade with the Eagles, which we'll get into. Let's break down the rest of their draft. They also have a round two pick, which is number 49. They have one third round pick, which is compensatory, and it is number 98. In round four, the Saints pick at 120. They have a fifth round pick, which is 161, and they have a sixth round pick, which is 194. Now, before the trade with the Eagles, the Saints had one first rounder, and I believe, and I'm going to break it down this way, and this is the way I looked at the trade with the Eagles from the beginning. And in my opinion, it's a pretty even trade for both teams. A lot of the pundits like to pick who won the trade. You don't really know these things until years from now. But the majority consensus is that the Eagles came out ahead in this trade. And it was pretty obvious. The Eagles had three first round picks this year. They essentially got rid of one of those picks to the Saints and in turn picked up a first round pick for next year from the Saints. So now the Eagles have two first round picks this year, two first round picks next year. The quarterback class next year is supposed to be pretty good, better than this year. And what everyone assumes is that the Eagles are going to let Jalen Hurts be their quarterback one more year. And if need be, they have the ammunition with two first round picks next year to trade up and grab a quarterback. Seems clear that the Eagles did what they wanted and got what they wanted. Now, in return, they also got a second round pick from the Saints 2 years from now in 2024. They also got a third round pick from the Saints this year. And I think that's where people are kind of freaking out. They're thinking that okay, the Saints got an extra first round pick this year, but they gave up a first round pick, a second round pick, and a third round pick to do it. And it just seems really expensive. Well, this is the way I look at it. Okay, the Saints were sitting at number 18. The Chargers pick at number 17. The Chargers have a lot of the same needs out of this draft that the Saints do. And with the Chargers sitting there one pick ahead of the Saints, it's very likely that the Chargers could grab either an offensive tackle or a wide receiver. Very, very likely. And if the Chargers do go for an offensive tackle, that is right at the spot in the draft where the elite tackles at that point, the consensus elite tackles at that point in the draft will be gone. So the Saints hopped up from 18 to 16 in the trade with the Eagles. That puts them ahead of the Chargers. If the Chargers want to get ahead of the Saints now, they're going to have to wheel and deal. This puts the Saints in a pretty good spot. Now, it's only two spots ahead from where they were, but like I said, it strategically puts them ahead of the Chargers. And I think for a move like that, from going to number 18 to number 16, that should cost you probably a third round pick, which the Saints gave up. They had two third rounders this year. They gave one to the Eagles to make this move. Okay, understandable. That's fine, fair. Now, the Saints wanted a second first round pick this year, and they got that from the Eagles, number 19. In order to do that, they traded a first round pick next year. So it's an even swap, a first rounder this year for a first rounder next year. Now, we don't know what that first round pick that the Eagles acquired from the Saints will be next year until the season's over. The Saints are betting that they are going to be a playoff team, and that first round pick next year that they would have would be way worse than number 19. Saints are banking on this. The Eagles, if you look at Vegas, they think the Saints are going to win 7 games, maybe 8. So the Eagles are thinking, well, this will be a better pick than a 19th pick. Okay, so swap first rounders. Now, in order to take a first rounder this year, you give them a first rounder next year. Like I said, you don't know what it's going to be. So there has to be some compensation. And I think the second round pick in 2024 is that compensation. It's a little high. That's the reason why the Saints traded a seventh rounder to the Eagles and acquired a sixth rounder from the Eagles this year. It kind of makes up a little bit of the difference. And really, what's going to be the telltale sign is not only how these draft picks work out for both teams, but what that first round pick will be that the Eagles acquired from the Saints next year. So, all in all, the way I look at it, it's an even trade. The Eagles got what they wanted, the Saints got what they wanted. Everybody's happy. Right now, the Saints have 7 draft picks, and they are positioned pretty well to do anything they want in this draft. The national consensus is that they don't know what the Saints are doing. They assume the only reason the Saints would want 2 first-round picks this year is to package them and move up to try to get a quarterback. And this is a quarterback class that a lot of people are complaining about. They say it's not very strong. In my opinion, you've got about 6 quarterbacks here who could potentially turn into starters. And if there's a run on quarterbacks, we could see at least 4 of these guys go in the first round. But I don't think the Saints are that desperate for a quarterback this year. We signed Jameis Winston to a 2-year contract. I believe the second year might be voidable for Winston. We'll see what happens this year. We also have Andy Dalton signed as a backup. So I think when you address the quarterback with 2 veterans the way we did, that you're not keen on moving up and getting a rookie. I don't think starting a rookie and having Dalton and Winston as your backups is what the Saints plan on doing. Now, if you draft a quarterback and they turn out fine and they win the job, that's great. The deal is next year the quarterback draft is supposed to be better. The class is supposed to be better, and the Saints have given away their first round pick next year. So if they are interested in getting a quarterback after this year through the draft, it's going to take a lot more wheeling and dealing. So the Saints are either really sold on a quarterback this year and they're going to package these picks and move up and get one, or they just like the depth right now in this class at those spots. And I think that's where the Saints are leaning. That's where I would like for them to go. I've done a ton of mock drafts over the last couple of days. I've seen other people's mock drafts. I've looked into different trade scenarios that other teams might do because of their needs, and literally dozens of mock drafts. So I've seen the board, I've seen how everything falls, and I think the Saints are sitting really good at 16 and 19. If there's a run on quarterbacks, the Saints will be doing even better because I think right at that spot is where you start to see the more elite and bona fide, for sure starters in the draft. You start to see some of the boards wane a little right around there. And we're talking about first round projections, I was focusing, and this video will focus on the top 150 prospects, which is roughly the first 4 rounds of the draft. So the players that the Saints are looking at in their first 3 picks, pick 16, pick 19, and pick 49, that's 3 players in the top 50. The Saints are pretty sure that they can get some very, very good players with those 3 picks. Players that we assume are going to come in and start immediately. And if we would like, with a third, a fourth, a fifth, and a sixth rounder, we can always package something and move up if there's a player that we're in love with. Let's say we want to move back into the second round and get someone. We've got enough ammunition to do it. Draft pick capital seems like a big, expensive waste if you're giving a bunch of picks up to go and grab one player. We feel that all the time with this team. We see them trade up constantly over the last 15 years. The Saints have been known to trade up and just give away draft capital to do it. If you get a guy and he works out, that's fine. The thing about draft capital to me is most of the time, half of these players don't make it anyway on your team, you know, and then half of the ones that do are special teamers and backups. If you can get 2 or 3 really good starters out of each draft, you're doing pretty good. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So I think that's what the Saints are looking at. The way the Saints run their salary cap and their roster, they love to restructure contracts. They love to push a lot of money to the end of the contract. They like to give restructured deals, giving big signing bonuses. The player gets paid right away, and we get to divvy that up through the length of the contract, which normally has voidable years at the end of the contract. So eventually, you feel like at some point the Saints are going to lose these players, and they're going to have to pay a bunch of money when it happens, dead money. This never really affects the Saints much because they're constantly restructuring. Okay, so you assume that eventually all of this stuff's going to bite the Saints, and it never really does. The Saints, I don't think they'll ever stop doing this, restructuring deals and stuff. So we like to stock up a lot of veterans in free agency. They're like low level, small salary veterans. I think we try to supplement our special teams that way. We like to grab a lot of veterans who have a lot of experience, but you don't really technically want them to start, but they could if they had to. But they excel at special teams. So, we've drafted a ton of signed a ton of players in free agency. We just don't really talk about them because they're not, big ticket, gonna start bona fide. So the biggest signing so far has been safety Marcus May. He is expected to start. The Saints lost both of their starting safeties this year. Marcus Williams has been signed by the Ravens, and Malcolm Jenkins retired. So the Saints defense has been great over the last 4 to 5 years under um, Dennis Allen as our defensive coordinator. We've steadily gotten better and better. We are considered one of the best defenses in the league right now. But we've never seen Dennis Allen as our defensive coordinator without Marcus Williams at safety. Now, Marcus Williams has a particular skill set. He's fast. He does the center field, free safety, top safety, very good. He's got excellent speed to get to where the ball's going. And I think a big difference, if you follow the Saints after their Super Bowl win in 2009, the Saints defense got worse and worse and worse. And over the last 5 years, they've gotten better and better and better. And I fear that a big part of that was Marcus Williams. And now that he's gone, my tendency was to think we needed to replace him with somebody with his skill set. Dennis Allen likes safeties that can do a little bit of everything. And the way that he runs his defense, we typically have maybe one or two linebackers on the field and mostly DBs, cornerbacks that can play in the box, safeties that can do it all, that can rush the passer and go deep in coverage. So that's what Dennis Allen likes. So I don't know if we're going to try to draft a safety in the mold of Marcus Williams. I believe that as far as safety goes, Dennis Allen's just going to keep getting the guys he likes, guys that can play different positions. Marcus May is one of those players. So whether Marcus plays free safety or strong safety, I don't know. I think it's the versatility that Allen is focused on. So I don't know how the Saints defense is going to look under Dennis Allen without Marcus Williams. I just don't know. So I think there's a legitimate concern there at defense. However, if you're a Saints fan, you know it's the offense that struggled last year. We've had a steady decline before Drew Brees retired, and then last year was the most inept passing attack ever. When Winston played, he did well. His completion percentage wasn't great, but he was throwing a lot of balls away. He was throwing balls where nobody could get to them, especially the DBs. He only threw 3 interceptions in 6 games and a quarter. He only threw 3 interceptions in 6 games and a quarter. So that projects to be pretty good. He also had 14 touchdowns, but he didn't have a lot of yards. And I think it's because Winston was trying to be conservative with the ball. He doesn't want to turn the ball over. That was the thing that, has every team not wanting him anymore. He had a 30 interception season. And I believe that's what we saw last year at Winston before he got hurt. He was being very conservative. But after he got injured, it was horrible. It was horrible, and we went through a total of like 4 quarterbacks and offensive linemen that couldn't stay healthy and stay on the field. I believe the Saints started more players than anyone else last year in the league, and we still managed to be 9-8. We missed the playoffs by one game, and so I think the Saints are okay as a team, as a whole. The defense, I'm questionable about because no more Marcus Williams. But on offense, we have needs. Teron Armstead's gone. We would like to have a starting offensive tackle. We would like to draft one that's going to come in and start immediately. We have James Hurst. He started 3 games last year at left tackle. He actually played in, I believe, 14 games last year. But he started 3 at left tackle. He only allowed 1 sack in those 3 starts. I believe he allowed about 12 pressures or something like that. He's a very good player. We just don't want him to be our starter. He can play any guard position, any tackle position. He's the perfect backup offensive lineman to have. The Saints love guys like that. So he's there, but I believe offensive tackle is a dire need for the Saints. I believe we need at least one guy who has the talent level of a James Hurst or better. And that is a position of need we're going to have to focus on in this draft. Also, and this goes without saying, we need a wide receiver. That was the issue last year. All of the guys that got a ton of starts and a ton of playing time last year were basically undrafted guys or guys that were drafted in the third round or lower, and these guys couldn't get a lot of separation. Marcus Callaway did pretty good. Um, Deontay Hardy, Harris, now Hardy, did very well in his role. Traquan Smith came on a little strong toward the end of the year, but he's been kind of a disappointment for us. All of these guys aren't bad if they're your number 3, number 4, number 5, but to have to go the whole season with them as your starters, it was rough. Okay, that's going to make Jameis better. Having Michael Thomas back, who I believe is healthy and ready to go, and I believe even if he's only 3/4 of the player he was before, he is a bona fide number 1. He's going to make Winston better. He's going to definitely make this offense better. So we're already sitting pretty with Michael Thomas coming back, but we definitely need another wide receiver. We need to get one out of the draft, and it wouldn't hurt to get a couple of them. If the draft falls a certain way and we're not able to address positions, we'll have free agency. The Saints still have a ton of money left to play with. So if we don't get a safety in the draft, we can always turn to free agency. There are still some good veteran players out there, like the Honey Badger, of course. And there's wide receivers like LSU's, Landry and Odell Beckham. And, there's a bunch of wide receivers out there who, if we went and got in free agency after the draft, they could be our number two, and it would be an upgrade for this team. So I'm not stressed out too much if we end up drafting wide receivers late in the draft or only getting one, something like that. Okay. Another big need for the Saints is tight end. Adam Troutman was probably the biggest disappointment last year. We really expected him to be the starter and to take off and blossom, and he shows promise at times, but the whole thing's not coming together just yet. Maybe this year, his third year, will be the year where he turns the corner. But Adam Troutman's there. We also have Taysom Hill as a full-time tight end now. If you take his receiving numbers and you look at it as an average per game and you extrapolate that over a full season, Taysom Hill looks to be the kind of tight end that'll catch 50 balls for about 650 yards, and he may score up to 8 to 10 touchdowns. Now, that's not bad for a tight end in the Saints system when you compare it to tight ends we've had in the last couple of years. Jared Cook was okay, but before that, we've just struggled. Ever since Jimmy Graham, we haven't really had a tight end that's really stood out for us. It'd be nice to get a guy, but in order to do that in this draft, you're going to have to pick one pretty early, and a lot of people would consider it a reach if the Saints decided to spend their second round pick on a tight end. But you're going to be lucky to have a tight end there later in the draft. And in my estimation, there's about six of them that are worth a pick in the first 4 rounds. So it all depends on how this draft falls. We also have Nick Vannett at tight end. We also have a couple of backups. We just got Holtz from the Bears. So, we have bodies in the room, but it's definitely an area we need to upgrade. But fair warning to you Saints fans, if we're going to upgrade at tight end, it's going to be with a project player later in the draft, and there are a few of them. You can get a good tight end. I think we got Jimmy Graham in the third round. You can get a good tight end. You're just not sure what you're getting when you draft them. And if you want one that's, you know, projected to be a competitor for a starter, a starting job, you're going to have to draft a tight end pretty early, and that means maybe reaching. Um, so that's your biggest needs, in my opinion: offensive tackle, wide receiver, tight end, safety. And the Saints have signed a ton of free agents for the defensive line, and we've got great depth at defensive end right now. I think we could use a draft pick at defensive tackle. I personally wouldn't mind them spending one of their first three picks on a defensive tackle so we could have that bona fide starter. And that's going to piss off some people too, because I think a lot of Saints fans want the Saints to focus on offense, just strictly offense. Well, the Saints they love offensive line and they love defensive line. So if you see the Saints draft a guard or a center or a defensive tackle high in the draft, I hope you don't freak. But they do love their offense and defensive linemen, and the Saints are pretty good at it. Zach Streif was a seventh round pick. Even Teron Armstead was a third round pick. In the past, we've gotten guards in the third round, in the fourth round, in the fifth round that have turned out to be Pro Bowl players. So if the Saints draft a guard this year, don't be surprised. By my estimation, there are about 8 guards or centers who are worthy of a pick in the first 4 rounds. And there's 5 of them that are really good and may slip. There's a couple of them that may be too good to pass with our second round pick. Just warning you guys ahead of time. You may think it's a waste of time if we do draft offense and go interior offensive line, but then you remember how you don't like Cesar Ruiz and you don't really like Andres Pete. So just keep all that in mind. Okay, so this draft class is pretty deep. We're going to switch gears and go to the draft now. This draft class is pretty deep when it comes to wide receiver. That goes without saying. That's what the big talk is, that the Saints could probably get a good starter in maybe the third round even. I've got 15 wide receivers projected to go in the first 4 rounds, as many as 6 going in the first round. So there is a ton of depth there at wide receiver. That's good for the Saints. It's good for the fans. That's what they want, and I'm sure we'll get one. This draft is also particularly deep, in my opinion, at edge rusher. I see 15 of them going in the first 4 rounds, including probably up to 6 in the first round. So, like I say, this draft is deep at edge rusher. If the Saints draft an edge rusher in the second round or third round, that might really upset some Saints fans. But when you have a draft that's deep at a position, and the team decides to go with the clear-cut best player available, that's why I'm giving you guys these stats, because I need you to be prepared. The Saints love to draft defensive ends, and there's about 15 of them that they can pick from in the first 4 rounds. This draft is also very deep at cornerback. The Saints were worried about cornerback to start last year, and by the end of the year, we felt like we had one of the best secondaries in the league, and we did, with Marcus Williams and with Marshawn Lattimore and with Adebo, the rookie, playing out of his mind. Also, the free agent trade acquisition of Roby from the Texans, and all of the great safeties we have with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and at the time Malcolm Jenkins, PJ Williams. So the Saints secondary looked very good. So why would they go and get a cornerback? Well, there's 15 cornerbacks in this draft that are projected to go in the first 4 rounds. Probably only 4 or 5 in the first round. So if there's a run on cornerbacks in the first round, that's going to push some of these other players down to us. That, to me, wouldn't be a bad thing for the Saints because, like I say, we're strong at cornerback. I would like to see a run on cornerbacks so some of these other players get pushed to us in positions of need that I would prefer we draft. Just be prepared. Some of these guys are too good to pass up with your third round pick or your fourth round pick. So be prepared for that. This draft is also particularly deep at linebacker. The Saints typically only have 2 linebackers on the field most plays, every now and then 3. And the Saints are actually pretty deep at linebacker, I think. Demario Davis is all world. We've got Pete Warner, who was a rookie last year and who played excellently. We've got Vaughn, who, we've had now for a couple of years, and I think at times he looks pretty good. And there's the chance to bring back Quan Alexander, which I think would be a great move for the Saints, and we have the money to do it. I'm still holding out that we'll get Quan because he hasn't signed with another team yet, and he looked great when he was on the field last year. I'm not sure if we lose a game when that guy's on the field. So if we do that, then the linebacking core looks okay. But there are 12 linebackers that are worthy of a first 4 round pick. And I think linebacker is going to be an overlooked position this year. Um, there's three in my mind that are first round projections. So if one of those guys slipped to the Saints in the second round, it would not surprise me to see them take a linebacker. So the draft is also pretty good when it comes to offensive tackle, pretty good when it comes to guard, pretty good when it comes to defensive tackle. There are a ton of safeties in the draft this year that appear to be versatile, which is something Dennis Allen likes. So I assume safety is going to be addressed in this draft. So there you go. I'm going to talk about the mock drafts that I've done now, and we'll see after a couple of dozen of them. You'll see kind of, in my opinion, where the draft is going to fall. With our first two picks in the first round, we are hoping to get an offensive tackle and a wide receiver. I think that's the consensus around the Saints fans, around the local media, national media. Thanks for trading both first round picks to go get a quarterback. Okay. Well, I hope we don't do that. But I think sitting where we are at 16 and 19, there is a chance that we can get one of the premier offensive tackles. And the consensus is there's four tackles worthy of a first round pick here. Evan Neal from Alabama, Ike Ekwonu from North Carolina State, Charles Cross from Mississippi State, and Trevor Penning from Northern Iowa. Penning may still be there when we pick at 16, and if he's still there, that's probably the pick the Saints are going to make. The depth at wide receivers, great in this draft, even if a couple of them go before the Saints pick at 16. If one of those four tackles is still there, I'm assuming the Saints are going to grab that offensive tackle. And with the second first round pick, grab the best wide receiver available. Most of the mock drafts I've done had all of the wide receivers falling. People were grabbing positions of need at other positions. Every team that drafted ahead of us seemed to think that the draft was deep at wide receiver, deep enough where they could put it off till their second round pick or whatever. So I'm looking at the Saints really having the choice of the litter here at wide receiver with that number 19 pick. Now, if a few guys go, you still got, in my opinion, six players that are first round projections at wide receiver. So any of those guys would make the Saints better immediately. So I think that's what the Saints do. I think if Trevor Penning is still there with the first round pick, we take him and then we take the best wide receiver there at 19. My favorite in the bunch is Chris Olave. He's got the route running and separation that we lacked sorely last year. I see Chris Olave getting open quickly and often, and if Winston can get the ball out fast, which he needs to do, to somebody who's wide open, obviously wide open because of the separation and the route running from Olave, it just seems like, you know, success. Olave's fast enough to take the top off too, so Olave would be my number one choice. He's out of Ohio State, so is Garrett Wilson. Some people have Wilson ranked higher than Olave, but either one of those guys would be fine. Jameson Williams from Alabama is a freak, and I'd be delighted to get him as well. Drake London out of USC is an interesting guy. Some people have him as a top 10 prospect. Other guys see Drake London falling into the late first round, into the second round. He's a big guy, 6'4", so it all depends on what you're looking for at wide receiver. Another big, interesting guy is Treylon Burks out of Arkansas. He's a guy who some people might want to pass on, but he's such a freakish specimen that I think whoever gets Burks is going to be happy. Jahan Dotson out of Penn State is also one to look for in the first round. And you've also got John Mitchie the third from Alabama, who he may sneak into the first round along with Christian Watson from North Dakota State and that massive guy from South Alabama, Jalen Tolbert. Those guys could all sneak into the first round if there's a run on wide receivers. But like I say, if the Saints take an offensive tackle at 16, you're going to get a pretty good wide receiver at 19. Now, when the second round came around, it was it was difficult. Safety at that point was something that I was really hoping for, and there are about six, maybe seven safeties that are worthy of a top first four round selection. But you're kind of reaching if a few of those safeties go in the first round into the second round. You're kind of reaching at the second round pick. Kyle Hamilton is probably, in my opinion, the best player in the draft. He'll be gone in the first five picks. And if the Saints trade both their first round picks to move up into the top five, I would not be surprised if Kyle Hamilton is that pick. And that will piss a lot of people off to move all those picks to go and get a safety. But Kyle Hamilton is a special player. I think he's the best player in the draft. I think he's a Pro Bowler right out of the gate. And that is one move I wouldn't mind. I also wouldn't mind packaging the two first round picks to go up into the top five and getting one of those top three offensive tackles, especially Neal out of Alabama or Cross out of Mississippi State. Those two moves wouldn't bother me as much as going for a quarterback, without a doubt. That would be horrible. But like I say, I think we should stay put. If only Kyle Hamilton gets picked in that first round and the second round comes around and there starts to be a run on safety, it wouldn't surprise me if the Saints use that second round pick on a safety, as long as it's Jalen Petrie out of Baylor, Daxton Hill out of Michigan, or Lewis Cine out of Georgia. Wakan Brister out of Penn State is the one that a lot of people have pinned for the Saints. He seems to be an excellent fit. I don't know if Brisker's going to go in the first round. And if we can get Brisker with the second round pick, I think that'll make the Saints very happy. But like I say, Cine, Hill, and Petrie are also guys that you could look at the second round. Though, Hill and Petrie and Cine out of Georgia, those might be considered reaches with that number, with that second round pick. The Saints have a need at defensive tackle, I think. If one of those defensive tackles fall, and you've got two from Georgia, not to mention the defensive end from Georgia, so there's three defensive linemen from Georgia to choose from. They would all be fine for the Saints. And you've also got Winfrey from Oklahoma. You've got Leal from Texas A&M, Travis Jones from Connecticut, Fedarian Mathis from Alabama, Matthew Butler from Tennessee. All of these defensive tackles, I think, would make the team for the Saints, especially any of the guys from Georgia. Would probably be your starter right away. So if the Saints do go defensive tackle in that second round, it would not surprise me, especially going after Davis from Georgia or Wyatt from Georgia, who I don't think is going to make it to the second round, or Leal from Texas A&M, Mathis from Alabama. Those guys, I could see us taking in the second round. If we don't get an offensive tackle in the first round and the second round comes along, there's two guys to look for: Bernard Rainman out of Central Michigan and Daniel Falele from Minnesota. I love the kid from Minnesota, 6'8", 384. I mean, the most massive man in the draft, and he keeps getting better. I believe he's from Australia, and he keeps getting better. His athleticism for that a man that size is pretty impressive. So to me, Falele out of Minnesota looks like a project who could turn into, like Teron Armstead did, a stud. And I wouldn't mind double dipping at wide receiver in the first round and then getting Falele out of Minnesota in the second round. To me, that would be great. I would not have an issue with that at all. So I'm a fan of Falele. We'll see how it goes. If you're gonna get a top tier tight end, you might have to spend that second round pick on Trey McBride out of Colorado State. And there's a few after that. I'm hoping Isaiah Likely out of Coastal Carolina falls to the third round. He's he's kind of pinned to go around the third round, and he's probably my favorite tight end in the bunch after McBride. I also really like Jake Ferguson out of Wisconsin. He may be there in the third round or fourth round. The reason why I like Ferguson out of Wisconsin is because he's an established run blocker, and he's good in the pass, but he is also a good run blocker. Now, most people expect the Saints are going to get a tight end that's a good pass catcher. Doesn't matter if he can run block in the vein of Jimmy Graham. We'll just make it happen. Adam Troutman's a pretty good run blocker. Nick Vanette's a decent run blocker. So why would you go and get another run blocker? I just think that Jake Ferguson out of Wisconsin is the most complete tight end. So, but there are a ton of tight ends who are projects. And if we don't want to reach with the second round or third round pick, we can definitely get a project in the later rounds. Running back is interesting. I think we need a running back. And I think if we draft one, it'll be fine. I expect Kamara to miss 6 games next year, something like that, maybe more. And we don't win ball games without Kamara. Our backups right now are Tony Jones Jr. and Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram is a fine running back, but I don't know if he's going to start 6 games for you next year. So I think running back is a necessity. The deal with the Saints is we acquire rookie free agent running backs who are phenomenal. Pierre Thomas is the best example of this. But you can go down the list over the last 15 years of all the free agent running backs who've made the team and have been kind of productive. You know, guys like Chris Ivory or anyway, Pierre Thomas was the best example. Nobody drafted him. The man had such great vision. No, he wasn't going to wow you with his 40 time, but his ability to have that vision when he carried the ball, to catch out of the backfield and run screens, it was just phenomenal. Definitely, without a doubt, one of my favorite Saints running backs of all time. We do good with rookie free agents when it comes to wide receiver and running back for sure. But this class only has about 5 running backs expected to go in the first 4 rounds. I mean, that are actually projected in the top 150 prospects. So, not a lot of running backs to choose from. A bunch of guys, if you want to take a chance on someone who seems like a complimentary back, someone that might fit the Saints system with a lot of speed that can catch the ball. But what I'm really looking for is someone who can carry the damn load for 6 games next year. So in that instance, if one of your top 5 running backs is sitting there in the fourth round, then the Saints may go ahead and make that move. So be wary of that. The Saints spending a fourth round pick on a running back. Wouldn't surprise me, like I say, if teams decide to draft running backs. There's only a handful of them that are, supposed to be starters here in the league, and so you may have to rely on your rookie free agent class or free agency again Yes, Murray's still out there, Latavius Murray, Devontae Freeman. Those guys spent time on the roster before. They're all out there. If you want to try to go and get a veteran, that wouldn't hurt. We need somebody who can carry the load with Mark Ingram or with Tony Jones Jr. for about 6 games next year. So, I'm gonna touch on center and guard here. Like I say, 8 players in the top 150. Any of these guys would be a great fourth round pick. So if the Saints address guard, don't lose it. Just remember, Andres Pete can slide to tackle if need be. Cesar Ruiz can slide to center if need be. So if we address guard and this guy ends up taking Ruiz's place as a starter, I don't think you're going to be too upset. I'm thinking that the depth here at a lot of these positions, including linebacker, which I'll touch on in a second, and edge rusher, which I'll touch on in a second. The depth is pretty good here. We may draft players that we have good depth at already. And what I'm thinking is going to happen is the Saints going to try to move a player if this happens. So let's say one of the best center or guards is sitting there for you with your second round pick, maybe Linderbaum out of Iowa or Kenyon Green out of Texas A&M or Zion Johnson out of Boston College. Those 3 guys really have first round grades. And if they're there with the second round pick or they're there with the third round pick, they're almost too valuable to pass up. So you draft a guy like Kenyon Green out of Texas A&M in the second or maybe third round, which would be crazy. You couldn't pass that up. Well, then you can move Cesar Ruiz. Somebody who needs a starting guard might send you a second round pick for Cesar Ruiz. Then all of a sudden, next year's draft, you're missing that one, but you just picked up a second. And that makes that draft a whole lot better. So that's all I'm saying. If Tyler Lindenbaum is still there with our second round pick, we might draft him, the best center in the draft this year. I mean, we have Mike McCoy. I figure we'll just put either McCoy or Lindenbaum at guard and move Ruiz or Andres Pete or however this works out. So that's what I'm saying. If we double dip a position we were already strong at, and let's say we go ahead and draft an edge rusher, just keep in mind that we're hoping this guy can be a starter, and then one of the guys that we have in our plethora of players, can get moved as well. The Saints look really good at defensive end right now. We have Cameron Jordan, who's all world, and he's getting older, so he's going to have to be replaced here in the next couple of years, probably. And opposite him is Marcus Davenport, who, when healthy, is one of the best defensive linemen in the league. The man had 12 sacks, nine sacks last year, 9 or 11, somewhere between 9 and 12 sacks last year. He only played 11 games. I think he had 9 sacks in 11 games, which is phenomenal. If the guy could play the other 6 games, and he would be in the Pro Bowl. Always disruptive. I love Davenport when he's healthy. We also have Peyton Turner, the first round pick from last year, who can slide inside, but we didn't see a lot of him. He only played 5 games last year. We also have Granderson, Carl Granderson, who we re-signed, and he got a ton of starts last year. So Cameron Jordan, Marcus Davenport, Peyton Turner, Carl Granderson. We also signed Taco Charlton, a former first round pick. We signed him this year. We also have a few ends from last year's practice squad and team that have carried over. We've signed a couple of defensive linemen in free agency, Street and I think Johnson, to go with Shy Tuttle and David Onyemata. So I think the center around the defensive tackle area is where we need to look at because we have depth at edge. Not to mention Passignon, who is a really good plug and play player at defensive end and linebacker for us. But like I say, there's a lot of edge rushers this year. Aiden Hutchinson is everyone's favorite player this year. Trayvon Walker out of Georgia is pretty good. And people love Kayvon Thibodeau, even though a lot of people don't want to pick him because they think there's an effort issue there. He's a freak of nature. So I doubt if he gets out of the top 10. Jermaine Johnson, the second out of Florida State, is also highly regarded and will probably be drafted before we pick with our first round pick. But there's still a good five guys after that that have high grades. A kid like Karloftis out of Purdue, which is he's been linked to the Saints. You can't really focus on any of the rumors right now because there's smoke screens. But if a guy like Karloftis or maybe Ojabo out of Michigan, and if I mispronounce these names, yeah, I'm from Louisiana. What can you say? Ojabo out of Michigan. If Karloftis or Ojabo is still there in the second round or even the third round, the Saints may have to just do it. Just remember that if we are stacked at one position, we may try to trade somebody, pick up additional picks. Defensive tackle is pretty deep for me, all the way down to, like I said, Mathis, Alabama, Butler, Tennessee, even John Ridgeway out of Arkansas, who's like a pure nose tackle. If you get that guy in the fourth round, I'm fine. I'm fine with any of these guys if they slide. Especially Devontae Wyatt from Georgia. We may value him so much in the first round that we can't pass on getting him in the first round. I love Jordan Davis out of Georgia. So, there you go. The only positions I haven't addressed yet, linebacker and safety. Nakobe Dean out of Georgia is a small guy. Sam Mills is probably my favorite linebacker, is one of my favorite players in Saints history, and he was a small guy. Nakobe Dean is the highest rated linebacker in this class, so I'm pretty sure his athleticism makes up for his small stature. My favorite linebacker in the group, though, is Devin Lloyd out of Utah. He's almost too good to pass up with those middle round, first round picks. I don't think we're going to go that route. Demario Davis is getting older. But if a guy like Christian Harris out of Alabama slides into the second round, it wouldn't surprise me if the Saints went that route. You also got Quay Walker and Channing Tindall out of Georgia, who might be there with the third round pick. They might be too good to pass up. And one of my favorite linebackers in the draft is Damian Beavers out of Cincinnati. He's not projected to go until the third or fourth round. I think he's a great player, and I think drafting him in the fourth round would be a steal. Troy Anderson out of Montana State is another player I really like as a fourth round or fifth round pick. And as far as the safeties go, like I say, Brisker, Scene, Hill, and Petrie are all there. If we decide to go, if we decide to wait and address safety later, if we can get one of those guys in the third round, it would be a steal. Hill or Petrie in the third round would be great. You also have Nick Cross out of Maryland and Brian Cook out of Cincinnati. I like those guys. If we can get either of those guys in the fourth round, that would be great. I mostly focused on the first four rounds because everything after that is generally special teams. You're lucky to hit on anybody after that. The highest rated punter in this year's class is pretty good. He's rated like number 100 prospect overall. He'll probably get drafted. We have a good punter, so it sucks when you see one like the guy this year, who could be your starter for the next 10 years, and you hate to pass on a once in a lifetime draft pick. But we have a good punter, and yeah, it's punter. So, and the LSU kicker is one of the only two kickers that may get drafted this year. We're not interested in that either. If Will Lutz comes back healthy, He's one of the best kickers we have of the league in the league. All right, so there you go. I hope the quality and everything of this was tolerable for you Saints fans. It's pretty long, but I wanted to break everything down. That's where I'm at with the Saints. As far as the draft goes, look for an offensive tackle and wide receiver in the first round. In the second round, look for best available player, which I'm hoping is a defensive lineman or a safety. And then in the third and fourth round, I'm really hoping that we can double up on wide receiver. And I would like another offensive lineman or another defensive lineman. That would be fine. As like I said, the depth at cornerback and linebacker is there. So in the third and fourth rounds, if we address the linebacker as safety, don't freak out, or especially guard. Really don't freak out because it'll be a very good guard. Double up on a wide receiver. The quarterbacks in this class are fine. My favorites are Desmond Ridder out of Cincinnati, Carson Strong out of Nevada. If Carson Strong is there with the third round pick, I think you go for it. I'm not too keen on spending a second round pick on a quarterback unless we're really in love with someone. Malik Willis is good. Kenny Pickett is good. Matt Corral is interesting. Sam Howell is interesting. Matt Corral or Sam Howell in the third round would be a steal. But I lean toward Carson Strong even more because of the arm. Anybody that's compared to Josh Allen. I mean, yeah, you could go ahead and take a flyer on that guy. The third round, I would. And that's it. There you go. That's my breakdown. I'm Joe. This has been a hour-long video talking about the Saints. If you like the Saints, I hope you enjoyed it. That's what I've got. You can come back to this video after the draft and see how everything turns out. Talk to you later. Bye.